All right. Take two. I was a bit too incoherent in the last take. Say hi to Vladimir Putin. Um, Looking good in his parka. That's what a real man and a real world leader looks like, folks. I've probably said it before. Americans are jealous of him because look at what we have in DC. We have people getting prosecuted for taking bribes in the form of gold bars. We got a guy who can't think, who's a dementia patient. And our choice next year for head of state is probably going to come down to that same dementia patient and a fucking game show host. And Americans are jealous that that the Russians have a real class act of a leader, and they should be proud of him. I want someone like him running the United States, but all we have is garbage. That's a reflection of our broader culture, by the way, and that's what really makes Americans pissed off. A lot of the animosity towards Vladimir Putin comes from the realization among Americans that their leadership is a reflection of them, and their leadership is dog shit. And that's where it all comes from. Let's go to geopolitics. Let's go to God. Let's start with Ukraine first. Excuse me. We have a battle going on. There's fighting all along the front line. I'm not a Ukraine mapping channel. I'm not going to do Ukraine mapping. But this is an interesting situation, so I just want to bring it to the fore. So we got this battle here going on. So basically the front line is going something like... Do I really want to draw it out? Not really. There's a big battle right now going for this strategically important city right here. Now the front line is... of the Russians stands at being, at this point, it's something like coming up this way, and then they got they got like a pocket going right here. And this is not exact, and then it goes something like this. I think I did pretty good. And then it comes out a little bit, and then it continues up this way and goes up all the way up, blah, blah, blah. So, okay. So, anyway, you get the picture. So, the Battle of Avdiivka. So, basically, Donetsk has been in Russian hands so far for the entire war. But they have been getting shelled, something the Western media has not reported on at all. But the Ukrainians have been shelling Donetsk, killing who knows how many hundreds of civilians. It's nothing like really, catastrophic. Basically the Ukrainians have been lobbing in mortar rounds and artillery rounds, several a day. I'm not sure. I'm not there. But you hear about like one day maybe one guy dies. The other day maybe a few people die. They're all civilians though. So Ukraine is intentionally shelling civilians. Now, one of the spots that the shells are coming from, I believe, is Avdiivka. But I believe most of the shells are coming from somewhere else. And I'm not sure where. Okay, I heard that actually the bulk, because people were saying this is where most of the shelling is coming from that's hitting the civilians of Donetsk. Someone else was saying it's actually coming from somewhere else. So the Russians really want this piece of real estate, though. There's this industrial area right here. Allegedly 5,000 Ukrainian troops, so basically an entire brigade, are stationed here and are guarding here. And there's lots of tunnels, especially under this industrial area, because this is a Soviet era industrial area. And right now the Russians have this pocket going on, and it's been very fierce fighting. Now the Ukrainians are claiming, as they are normally do, they're claiming, that we've destroyed 200, 400, however many armored vehicles, and they're putting out all these numbers. Anybody who believes anything they say at this point, uh, you're fucking stupid. I mean, you're a real dupe if you believe what Ukraine says. We still should listen to their reports and then try to listen to both sides. But really, I take everything Ukraine says with a grain of salt. Russia, on the other hand, tends to lie less, but they also reveal a lot less in terms of information. So, what's very interesting about this battle is it's really, really tough fighting. And what they're really fighting over, what's really amazing, is they're fighting over this big heap of slag right here. This is like the main focal point of the battle. And this is because the slag heap, is what they call it, gives a commanding view over this industrial area, which is basically the main fortified spot. And if they take this industrial area, then they'll be able to basically close the pocket, because you got a road here, as you can see, the road here, you got a road here, and you got some smaller roads here. If they can take this industrial area right here, they can interdict everything going into the main city, and then it's only a matter of time before it falls. So it's been very, very fierce fighting. I would say definitely, my feeling is that Russia is experiencing significantly more casualties than they're used to, but the Ukrainians are just pouring troops in here, and who knows how many, maybe thousands of troops already have died over this slag heap, which is amazing. It's very tragic that human beings do this sort of thing, but that's what human beings do. And once they get this slag heap, they'll be able to do direct fire basically anywhere in this industrial area, and then it's lights out. They get this industrial area, and they got the town. So that's what's going on in Ukraine geopolitically. Putin went down here to Rostov on Don a couple days ago to meet with General Gerasimov and the other people in the Russian leadership. So this kind of signifies how important this is. And then even Zaluzhny came in somewhere and visited one of the command posts here. I doubt he went into Avdiivka itself, but he did visit the command. So very interesting. This is going to be a pivotal battle, not unlike Bakhmut. Maybe even more important. It's going to be maybe even more of a bellwether than Bakhmut was. I really find it amazing that the Ukrainians are still fighting. Not that the young men have a choice. I even heard that the young Ukrainian men. So in Kiev, over the I should have put a source on for this, but I definitely heard that that the press gangs, the recruiters, are setting up checkpoints on roads in Ukraine and in Kiev, and they're starting to they're setting up these checkpoints because a lot of the young men for months now, and I heard this from a first-hand account, they've been hiding. They've been not going out because they're afraid of getting scooped up by the recruiters, the press gangs, then put into a uniform and sent to the front line with little or no training. I mean, it's a death sentence, right? So what they're doing now is they're setting up checkpoints around Kiev in order to catch these guys while they're out doing the bare necessities that they have to do. Go getting food, paying bills, doing whatever they have to do, going to work. So they're setting up these checkpoints all over the place in order to catch young men, and then they send them to their deaths, pretty much. I even heard another very tragic story in Ukraine about a group of soldiers. So they've been doing these really, in my opinion, very stupid amphibious assaults here across the Dnieper River. I'm not sure exactly where, but it's like something like this. They're doing these amphibious assaults Really dumb, really counterproductive. All they're doing is wasting people. What they're really doing right now is they're trying to get media attention any way they can because they can feel the attention slipping away from them. The regime of Ukraine knows that if the media doesn't stay focused on them, then the politicians in various Western countries are going to be less likely to send them money. And that's really what it's all about to the politicians and the bureaucrats in Ukraine and to the pensioners in Ukraine is that the money keeps flowing in. Okay? And so they're doing stupid things like these really nonsensical amphibious assaults across the Dnieper River. I think it's actually further down, if I remember correctly, somewhere further. No, it's maybe right over here somewhere in that area. So anyway, there was a group of soldiers who refused to go across. And apparently there was a mass execution. I don't know the numbers, but mass execution, I would think that's 10 or more. And it could be significantly more. They were just shot on the spot for refusing to go across the river. And this has been throughout the war. This has been going on. The media, of course, refuses to report on any of this. Pretty much any Ukrainian war crime, the media has refused to, except for the missile they said was a mistake, the missile attack in the market a few weeks ago. But they say that was a mistake. Who knows if it was a mistake? But they refuse to report on any of this. Meanwhile, they're making up fake war crimes all the time on the part of the Russians. Bucha and so many other things. It's been time and time again. Anybody who takes the coverage seriously needs to get their head checked, obviously. So that's Ukraine. Some interesting things going on over there. Now let's go to Gaza. And my thing on Gaza is this. I said last week, and I'm already being vindicated in this, and I have to pat myself on the back here. I said that Israel needs to change their approach to the Palestinians. And what are we seeing now? Now, I'm actually surprised that the media is actually covering this marginally fairly. They actually reported on the Western media, actually reported on the hospital explosion, which was, in my opinion, most likely an Israeli airstrike. Okay, I've seen all the evidence I need to see. You can believe Fox News or MSNBC. I look at the actual evidence. They actually reported on the church bombing that was yesterday or the day before yesterday, where the Israelis bombed an Orthodox church in Gaza, a Christian church, killed a few hundred people. So I've been really surprised by this. It makes sense in that there's always been in the mainstream left of this country and in Europe a pro-Palestinian, a very outspoken and a very large pro-Palestinian camp. And this is especially evident in academia. And they're being allowed to voice their concerns. And this has really turned the entire global opinion against the Israelis in a way that I didn't expect, I'll be honest. But what I said in the beginning is is vindicated, even more so, because Israel is approaching this as they had in the past, that they can just go in and massacre Palestinians. I think the death toll is at least 5,000 by now. I know yesterday it was over 4,000. So we got to be close to 5,000 by now. Civilians. Okay. And Hamas allegedly killed 1,500 Israelis or so. So, if two wrongs make a right, then the Israelis are doubly right, triply right at this point, okay? They're coming into this again. Israel, like the United States, is run by boomers, and these boomers, they think, that are running the institutions in Israel, that are in control of the political system, who have the electoral leverage. They're approaching this situation like it's 1990. let's say 1999. And it's not 1999. It is 2023. The world is different. The backing of the United States, okay, means less now than it did in the 90s. The Israelis are not going to be able to get away with indiscriminately bombing civilians. They're getting away they'll get away with it in the short term probably, but in the long term they won't. And this idea that the United States is going to back up Israel no matter what. But anybody who thinks that doesn't understand politics. They're already sweating bullets just seeing the opposition on the streets as it is. In Europe, they're already changing their tune a little bit. And in the United States, you have Biden trying to play both sides. He's going and saying, oh, it's terrible what's happening to the people in Gaza. But then he's going under the table to Netanyahu, giving him the green light, apparently, according to, I believe, the Times of Israel said that, and the Telegraph. So apparently he gave Netanyahu the green light, but he's going out in public, and he's being duplicitous and saying we need to respect human rights, even though he just told Netanyahu, apparently, you don't have to respect human rights. So he's being duplicitous. But what that means is that he's going to be less reliable. The American political system is not going to be reliable. If the Israelis think they can go in and just do whatever they want, they got another thing coming. And like I said in the last video, the United States is, as we can see here, the United States is a dying empire. Okay, you see that? That means the United States is a dying empire. Israel needs to understand that if they want to, and I want Israel to continue to exist. I don't want the people who've lived in Israel, the innocent civilians. Many of them oppose what the government is doing, I'm sure. I don't want them to have to pack up and leave, get pushed out because their government is stupid. I don't want that. I don't even think the Palestinians want that. Okay, so some might, but most don't. But if they want to continue to have their Jewish nation, which I'm fully in support of, I'm not in support of the government at all. But as far as the people being allowed to live there, on a side note, if Palestine was given over to Arab rule at the beginning of the 20th century, okay, maybe given to King Faisal or whoever, if that happened, they would have let Jews move into Israel and live in Israel. It never would have been a problem, because prior to 1920s, really the 1920s, when basically Britain and France went back on every promise they made to the Arabs and also fought repressive wars against the Arabs and brutally suppressed rebellions by Arab populations in Iraq, in Syria, and elsewhere. If it wasn't for that, if they would have just given Palestine to the Palestinians and said, hey, can you let the Jews come in and move in, wouldn't have been a problem. It's never been a problem before. In Baghdad, prior to this conflict breaking out between the Zionists and the Arabs, Baghdad had something like a 20% population of Jews for hundreds, maybe 1,000 years or more. Arabs and Jews have never historically had a problem. It's because of the British and the French and the Americans using Jewish people as a means to slither their way into the Middle East. It's what it's always been, and they use the Jewish people, and the Arabs know that. Okay, but I submit, and for the record, if Palestine was given over to Arab rule in the beginning, plenty of Jews, I'm sure millions of Jews would have moved there, and they would have been given all of the rights that any other citizen in the Middle East would be given. I mean, it would have been a secular Arab-run regime in the first place. It wouldn't have been Sharia law or anything like that. Okay, so let's just be real here. Now I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so back to this. I'm being vindicated here. Public opinion is already turning against the Israeli regime. First of all, Netanyahu, he's finished. He doesn't, maybe he doesn't know it, and he's going to dig himself a deeper hole. But he's finished. And these boomer right winger fucking assholes that are running Israel, this is their last hurrah. But what they're doing, by doing what they're doing right now, they're sowing the seeds of Israel's destruction. This is what is happening right now, and I don't want that to happen. I'm sure a lot of Arabs don't want that to happen. They don't want that to happen either. But this could be the beginning of the end of Israel, because if it becomes in America's interest to drop Israel like a bad habit, don't believe for a second that they won't. What if the oil-rich nations in the Middle East start threatening to embargo the United States? Then our tune will change really quickly. Global opinion is turning against Israel. Anybody who thinks that the United States is going to back up Israel no matter what is fucking stupid, okay? And there's lots of people like that. Okay, so that's my take on Israel right now. It's a really bad situation. I mean, we haven't even gotten into, the starvation that's going to set in, all the disease that's going to break out. I mean, regardless of the bombing, even just the blockade is going to be bad enough. So this could turn out to be a really bad situation, especially given the fact that the media is not giving Israel carte blanche to do whatever they want. The media is actually, in a very surreptitious way, more or less, but still, nonetheless, they are actually reporting on Israeli impropriety, which I didn't expect, okay? And probably the Israelis didn't expect either. They're probably still not realizing what's going on, because over there, I'm sure the media is totally controlled. So they're probably wondering, hey, why are so many people, protesting in London? Well, it's because, the Guardian actually reported. They went back on it a little bit, but they actually reported on the hospital bombing. They actually reported on the church bombing yesterday. Justin Amash lost family members. A former House of Representatives guy that was kind of like a libertarian. He lost family members in Gaza at the church bombing yesterday. So there's going to be no way to cover this up. And then my opinion on the ground invasion is if they actually do this ground invasion, okay, folks, I mean, they're going to win, but they're going to lose way more troops than they expected, and it's just going to be a complete shit show. And I don't, at this point, I'm wondering if they're actually going to do it. To me, it seems kind of like what happened in Africa a few months back, where Nigeria was threatening to invade Niger, and they were talking all this shit, and nothing ever happened. Seems like maybe something like that's happening here. But, don't forget, we got boomers with crutches on their shoulders who are running Israel. And they want to send their babies to war because they want to feel like war heroes, like their parents. They want to live vicariously through their children, and they want to be war heroes. And the same is true here in the United States, okay? Never forget that. Take that shit seriously, okay? I don't want to go on a huge tangent about that. Maybe in another video, we'll talk about the boomers and why they're so fucking warped and why they're a danger to this world, okay? So, an example of what's going on with the United States diplomatically is that, the couple things happen. So the United States is going around the Middle East trying to get Egypt, for example, to allow every citizen of Gaza to come into Egypt and give the territory to Israel. First of all, that's a war crime. You can't just tell millions of people to move from their home. It's not legal. It's not ethical. So the United States is going around the Middle East saying, hey, Egypt, will you open your borders and let the Gaza citizens into, Sinai over here in this parched desert, let them put tents out here. And, sure, the Israelis will let them come back. We promise. Well, no, the Israelis wouldn't let them come back. And Egypt knows that. So Egypt, the president of Egypt basically bitch slapped Blinken over here. Maybe we can give this a
معالي
little
وزير
airplay.
الخارجية بلينكن، أنت تحدثت وقلت أنك إنسان يهودي، وأنا اسمح لي أقول لك إن أنا مواطن مصري نشأت في حي جنبا إلى جنب مع اليهود في مصر، ولم يكن أبدا يتعرضوا أي شكل من أشكال القمع أو أي شكل من أشكال الاستهداف. وما حصلش في منطقتنا العربية والإسلامية إن تم استهداف اليهود في تاريخهم القديم والحديث. يمكن اللي حصل استهداف يمكن في أوروبا، يمكن في أسبانيا، يمكن في دول أخرى، لكن في بلادنا العربية والإسلامية ما حصلش ده. أنا بقول ده دلوقتي وبسجله هنا. معالي وزير الخارجية.
So basically, he bitch slapped Blinken because Blinken's going around the Middle East saying, "Hey, I'm Jewish, so listen to what I'm saying." And the people in the Middle East are like, first of all, we know you're Jewish. Second of all, that's not relevant. Third of all, you're not bringing millions of people into my country because you want to appease Israel. It's not moral and ethically right. It's a war crime, and it's not good for us. So basically, Sisi bitch slapped Blinken, which was great. Another thing that happened that I don't have marked on the map is that there was supposed to be a summit in Jordan between Biden, the Egyptian president, and the Jordanian president, and maybe some other people. That was the day, supposed to be the day after the hospital bombing took place. Well, the hospital bombing took place. Jordan actually canceled a summit with President Biden. Okay. I can't recall a time anything like that's ever happened, especially in the Middle East. Canceling a summit with the president, a scheduled summit with the president, okay, is a huge affront to the United States diplomatically. It's extremely embarrassing. Now, the media didn't cover that at all, okay, but that is a big deal. Elsewhere in the world, let's see, Nigeria. They want in Nigeria. They want the UN troops out. Reconstruction in Libya gets political. UN Security Council. So basically, in Libya, we're continuing the story. Libya is actually split into two governments. There's a government over here in East Libya, and then there's the internationally recognized government over here in West Libya. And they're currently jostling for control. And the government in East Libya is saying, well, you guys are not very good at your job in West Libya because you allowed that horrible tragedy to happen with the flood, which was basically due to government incompetence because they weren't taking care of the water management, the dams and stuff. So basically, both of them are talking to the Security Council and asking for money and help and all that. The World Bank had its first Africa summit in 50 years. So this is a sign that was in Morocco at the beginning of last week. So this is a sign that, because the World Bank is basically an extension of the United States financial sector and the U.S. government. And so basically this is a sign that the United States is starting to take Africa seriously, which they should. What's happening here? I found this pretty interesting. I was reading this article. So apparently the United States is putting pressure on the government of, is it Rwanda or Uganda? Uganda again. Oh, there's always something going on in Uganda. The United States government is putting pressure on, so basically there's a huge used clothing market in Africa, and I've heard about that for years. I remember the story of, the Salvation Army sending donated clothes, selling donated clothes to used clothing distributors in Africa. That was a big scandal like 20 years ago. So apparently the used clothing market is huge, and Uganda wants to ban it because they want to encourage their own textile industry and their own clothing industry in Uganda. And this is happening around Africa. And apparently, and I don't, it's funny the United States government is actually trying to exert pressure on Uganda to not ban used clothing, because a lot of the used clothing is coming from the United States. But I'm just like thinking like, wait a minute, this is clothing. This is just clothing. Like this can't be a big ticket item. This can't be a big ticket thing, right? Big money thing that would warrant the attention of the United States. But apparently it is. Apparently the United States finds it very important that used clothing from the United States continues to flow into Africa. So I just found that interesting. Let's see what's happening in Kenya. So there is a lawsuit filed between some employees and a contractor of Facebook. Meta, you could call it Meta if you want. So apparently they say they were mistreated, poor working conditions, and the contractor, which is a direct subsidiary, I believe, of Meta, is being sued. And, are we surprised that, Mark Zuckerberg, Mr. Diversity, Inclusion, Equity guy, is mistreating Africans? Are we surprised? Why would you be surprised? All of these people are hypocrites, folks. Every last one of them. And a lot of them are pedophiles, too, in my opinion. Brazil. So they were, they're still going after Bolsonaro in Brazil. You got the elections coming up in Argentina very soon. Go Malay. Long live Malay. Peru economy shrinks again, so Peru's falling apart. Now, just to recap, Peru had a populist president who was elected. The court system, now this is, I'm not an expert on this, just to, so just do your own research, but this is basically my understanding. So the guy was not, this populist sort of cowboy socialist guy won the election, and the court system invalidated his election and put in this woman in his place, and people in Peru were pissed off, and it's been fucking problems ever since. And to me, it stinks of good old United States Operation Condor type of interference. Apparently, the Amazon River is at its lowest point in decades. So there's a bad drought going on there. Their rainy season was very dry. Ecuador, the president, Noboa, wins the... Noboa, who is the son of a banana tycoon, they say. Basically, he's the heir to a huge banana company. He won the election. He's the youngest president ever in Ecuador. Ecuador faces a lot of challenges. A big retirement spot for United States citizens, I hear. So that's interesting. The market, so the stock market, basically the bond market in the United States, the treasury market, which is the basis of our entire economy, because we have a debt-based economy. So treasuries are very important because they're used as collateral for loans among the big financial institutions. So your interest rates, your yields, which reflect your interest rates, if those go up too high, you got a big problem. And they have been going up. We're approaching a 5% yield on the U.S. Treasury, which is higher than it's been in almost 2 decades. And things are fireworks going to... I mean, it seems like the bond market, the debt market, because there's so much debt out there, and because there's so much treasury issuance, in other words, the United States government is selling so many treasury bonds and bills and whatever, there's a lot of pressure on interest rates. In a debt-based economy where you need debt in order to foster growth, you don't want high interest rates, obviously, because that makes the price of the credit too high. So we got a brewing situation in the United States over here, and of course that can affect the entire world. Let's see what happened in Canada. So this was funny. So we heard all this about wildfires in Canada global warming. But just south of the border, the United States had a very, very quiet wildfire season. So go figure. Go figure. But it's still global warming. Um, Australia voted no on a indigenous rights bill. So basically, a bill that was supposed to give constitutional representation to the Aboriginal people of Australia was given a NO by a pretty large margin. So that was expected. New Zealand Labor. Oh yeah, Labor. So New Zealand got its ass kicked in an election because, and they don't want to admit it in this article, but it has mostly to do with the COVID policy. And they say, oh, it's because of high prices. Well, the reason the inflation came about was because of the stupid COVID policy. So Labor got their asses kicked in the New Zealand election. We're seeing that all over the world. Basically, all of the COVID regimes, every regime that ran their countries during COVID is getting booted out. Okay, people are starting to connect the dots here, apparently. Philippines. This was is a Wikipedia. What did I do a Wikipedia article for? I don't know what I did. I have to fix that. That was supposed to be an article regarding basically the military buildup in the Philippines and the United States and all that. So I have to fix that. China had a breakthrough on quantum-based computing, so very interesting. Belt and Road Initiative, Belt and Road Summit was this week, and it was quite a summit. Basically, everybody wanted to be there. Just a further sign of the shift in diplomatic power from the West to the East. The sun is setting in the West and it's rising in the East, and that will continue. Taliban plans to join Belt and Road Initiative, so that's interesting. And there was another earthquake, or an aftershock of an earthquake that was pretty significant in Afghanistan. Russia Duma votes to scrap the nuclear test ban. Big problem. But can you blame them? We have the rolling on the floor laughing emoji over here for. So there was another pipeline that was bombed, and again, United States stands to benefit heavily from the destruction of this pipeline, because this pipeline was bringing gas in from Russia, and that pipeline was destroyed. And they're blaming China. So instead of blaming Russia, they wised up. They said, hey, let's not blame Russia this time. That's just a little bit too dumb. Let's blame China. Why did China do it? No one knows. No one has any clue. There's no explanation, but they're trying to blame China. Germany is, after closing their nuclear power plants, now they're approving the refiring their coal power plants. So way to go, Germany. You guys are dumb. You guys are now, look, my people, the Germans, you have won the prize for being the stupidest fucking people in the world, even dumber than the United States. And that's a tough one to beat. And then going back to what I was talking about in Gaza, this started early last week. People were starting to march in London, which has a significant Arab population, as we know, and they're not having it. They're going crazy over there in London. So, and this one was good. Grifter Maloney, one of the biggest grifters of 2022 and 2023, she broke up with her partner. So, good. So maybe she'll be looking even more mean now. And that is it. That is my geopolitics update for this week. We're going to keep it going pretty soon. I'm going to have to start deleting these maps, though, because Scribble Maps only lets me do 5 for free. I don't think I want to. I have to look and see how much it costs. I'll consider paying for it. I doubt it. But that's it. The world is continuing to fall apart. The United States is continuing to fall apart. You know what? let's end the video with saying goodbye to Putin. Bye, Putin. I am out.